Hi folks, welcome to Module 4. This week we're talking about e-learning and health professions education. So what is e-learning? E-learning is short for electronic learning and is hopefully what you're doing while you're watching this video. There are many definitions of e-learning, but it can be broadly understood as a wide range of learning activities that are delivered by computers, using content from the internet, digital social networks, or learning management systems. Learning management systems, such as Brightspace, Blackboard, Edmodo, and Moodle, often contain a wide variety of tools such as discussion boards, blogs, wikis, quiz tools, and other course-related content. Because the definition of e-learning is so broad, there can be a lot of variation in what e-learning looks like. For example, your content can be asynchronous or synchronous. Asynchronous e-learning means that the learning does not occur simultaneously. Learners have to pace their own self-instruction and learning, as is the case in our course. This can include the use of discussion boards and videos like this. Synchronous e-learning, on the other hand, means that learning is occurring in real time or simultaneously. So learners all log in and receive the information at the same time. An example of this would be teleconferencing. E-learning classes can also be fully online, like this course, or a combination of online and face-to-face interaction, which is called blended learning. Although definitions of e-learning may vary slightly between different authors, what is important is that e-learning is recognized as a distinct teaching strategy. As educators, we shouldn't be treating our online courses as though they are just a duplication of an in-person class. So what's the history of e-learning? Well, this actually isn't the easiest question to answer. E-learning is often associated with technology, but what is technology? Take a moment to look at your desk and around the room. What kinds of technology currently surround you? As LOA and Masters point out, even Archimedes using a stick to draw his theorems into the sand is an example of using technology in education. As you looked around the room and identified types of technology, did you consider non-electronic technologies? For example, pencils, pens, chalkboards, whiteboards? Believe it or not, these are all actually types of technology. As LOA and Masters put it, in most cases these technologies were not originally conceived as educational, but were appropriated by educators, ever watchful for methods of improving their practice. Such is the case with computers and the internet. Now, linking the origins of e-learning, at least as we understand it, back to Archimedes is a bit of a stretch. But e-learning is actually a much older teaching strategy than some may realize. That being said, it's actually really difficult to pinpoint the exact time that e-learning's evolution began. Kidd 2010 proposes that this evolution began in the early 1960s, surrounding the use of technology in education, although its application then was rare due to the cost of early computers. Some authors date it as even earlier than this, such as the 1940s or even the 1920s. Others date it as recent as the 1980s with the advent of computer-based teaching and Web 1.0. At this time, learners browsed collections of information, and very few people published by this means. However, the recent advent of Web 2.0 technologies has drastically changed how computers are used. Lay people are now able to easily create and share information and join virtual communities. This includes social media platforms, including social networking sites, blogs, wikis, and file sharing. Other recent developments include massive open online courses, mobile learning or m-learning, and the development of Web 3.0 tools. So what are some related theories of learning? Well, a fairly familiar example for our class would be communities of practice. There is some literature on using e-learning for communities of practice, for example within undergraduate health professions education and general practice residency. In fact, technology and the internet has expanded the possibilities for communities of practice beyond geographic boundaries. Another theory you may come across in this area is Connectivism. Connectivism is a theory that was specifically developed to address learning via internet technologies. Within the literature, it's described as a theory that explains how internet technologies have created opportunities for learning across online peer networks. Teachers guide students to information and key answers as needed to support students' learning and sharing. There are a number of advantages to e-learning. Perhaps one of the most important advantages is its compatibility with distance learning, allowing for increased access to education for rural and remote communities. E-learning also allows learners to have more control over the pace and timing of their learning. It can make it easier to update knowledge and skills and improve professional practice. There are also a number of advantages for us as educators. For example, e-learning content is easy to update, resources and grades are automatically archived, and automated tracking and evaluations can save us a lot of time. We can also reuse a lot of our resources. So for example, this video on e-learning, I'll be able to use in other classes that I teach. There are also a number of adaptations we can make to the course for learners and educators with disabilities. However, this can also be a challenge, because as educators we need to consider how people with disabilities will be able to engage with our e-learning materials. Some things you may want to consider include overall color contrast, sentence length, font choices, including the size, type, color, and spacing between lines, and providing descriptive text for images. Audio and video files can also be tricky. All crucial information needs to be available somewhere else so individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing don't miss it. This is why I closed caption the videos that I make. So as I've started to go into a bit here, there are a number of challenges that educators and learners can encounter with e-learning. First, both educators and learners need to have some technological knowledge. It can also be very uncomfortable for educators when your learners are more tech savvy than you are. There can also be general technological challenges, for example, institutional firewalls blocking e-learning websites. Learners and educators also need access to electronic devices, electricity, and the internet. Poor internet speed and low bandwidth can impact what types of e-learning can be done. And this brings us to digital divides. Digital divides are defined as disparities among different population groups or geographical regions in their access to broadband systems. This can include geographical location, culture, language, social class, income, educational level, and even age. So for example, rural and remote communities often don't have the same options for internet as we do in more urban places like Ottawa, Toronto, or Vancouver, for example. They may not have strong or reliable enough internet connection for synchronous e-learning activities. In these cases, asynchronous learning activities may be more appropriate. Maintaining continued engagement of learners and the instructor can also be a challenge. And finally, e-learning can be very time-consuming for the educator, especially the initial design of the course, but also the ongoing delivery of it. As Asani 2010 points out, we have to start preparing our online courses well in advance. Even something as simple as giving instructions for something, which could be done very quickly in a face-to-face setting, takes far more time because we have to type out every single detail. Even these short recorded videos I do for our class, which I typically try and keep under 10 minutes, take me hours to produce. So how might e-learning be used? Because there are so many different e-learning tools, there's a lot of variation in how we can use them as educators. And this goes beyond the simple example of using e-learning for a course like this. For example, Twitter has been used with internal medicine residents and surgical clerks. Facebook has been used to foster asynchronous interaction amongst general practice residents. Wikis for teaching neuroscience to medical students. SurveyMonkey and Google Docs to make more interactive lectures in medicine. And YouTube for teaching and studying anatomy. You can also use e-learning in conjunction with a lot of other different teaching strategies, as our reading this week kind of alluded to. For example, problem-based learning, simulation, virtual patients and gaming, and reflection. If you want to learn more about e-learning, you can check out these articles here on the screen. I've also included my reference list here so you can see the resources I consulted for this presentation. That's all for now, folks. I hope you enjoyed this presentation on e-learning and found it informative. And as always, I will see you all online.